Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this first session of Rethink University. I'm hoping that you all can hear me and hear us well. If there are any issues, feel free to put this in the chat so we make sure we can deal with those as they come. Before we actually start the session, what I want to do is just share a little bit about the agenda for today's seminar, and talk a little bit about this Rethink University program and what it's about. So first of all, before I start, my name is James Walker. I'm on the CIC Past Students Union. I'm on the Student and School Affairs Subcommittee, which is led by Greg Mannett. So the agenda for today, we'll have the welcome from the principal and a prayer. We will introduce the Rethink University concept and what this session is about. I will then introduce the moderator for today, Kevin Harris, who will introduce the panelists. Each of the panelists have a fantastic story to tell you today, and they're going to share with you a bit of their story. And then we're really going to spend the most amount of time on a Q&A session where we will invite you to submit your questions. And you can do that in a couple of ways. You can either submit it in the Q&A, the chat functionality here on Zoom. But of course, you could also raise your hand, and then we will bring you off of mute and onto camera, or not on camera, to actually ask your question live, which is another option as well. So just bear that in mind. We want this to be an interactive session as best as possible. So we encourage you to ask your questions, and we've really dedicated the most amount of time on this event to that. So what I'm going to do is just hand it over now to our principal, Mr. Joseph, for our welcome and prayer, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I invite you to join me in a prayer at this point. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, indeed, all things are in your hands. Our future, our plans, our protection. Indeed, your Holy Spirit continues to be a guide along the way, helping us in our decisions and what we choose to do. And invariably, O Lord God, you send others to guide us and to give us the encouragement and to inform us in what might be the best decisions we can make in the interest of our future, our growth, our development, our contribution to society. This afternoon, we give thanks to members of the Past Students Union for taking this time to be an instrument of your Holy Spirit in helping and in guiding students in looking and reflecting on their career interests, their career goals, their career paths, and the opportunities that exist along the way. Indeed, I pray for each and every person who is present this afternoon that the session would prove to be helpful, beneficial, fruitful, and that indeed in every way possible, Lord God, it may assist them all in truly finding their calling and where you may want them to serve in life. In your name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good afternoon to all who are presently locked in or signed into this seminar. And I want to first start off by thanking those members of the PSU who have decided to take the time, give up their talent to put on such an event that is totally geared towards helping you young men in your future decision making, in helping you see and give perspective on the road, your career path and journey, and to enlighten you and to dispel some notions that may be held by many, that once on a certain path, that path is set in gold and or set in cement and you cannot deviate. And the reality is, and for some of you all who may have been part of our recent career seminar, the reality is that isn't entirely the case. The reality is that as you go along and you discover self and you become more in tune with your God and you're guided and prompted from within, you may find that you start in one journey and you can end up somewhere totally different. One of the things that was reiterated, was emphasized in the session, in the career seminar, was maintain and follow your passion. I want to say that even from my own personal journey, and I've said it many times before, and I don't know how many may not have heard it, but I did not start off seeking to pursue a career in education. I studied electrical engineering at UE, and I actually worked as an electrical engineer at two different companies for 4 years. And along the way, I just felt in my heart a greater calling for something different. And mind you, I didn't dislike engineering, I enjoyed it tremendously. But I felt that I had a calling towards working with youth, helping people. And last day of work, I left my place of employ in engineering in the last day of the working day of January 1990. And I went in the first working day of February into St. Mary's College. And all of my teaching experience, teacher, dean of Form 1, dean of Form 4, vice principal, then principal, unfolded. And I have no regrets. I enjoy tremendously what I do, and I think I've made quite a good bit of contributions to persons in their educational, on their educational path. And I am therefore living testimony to the fact that life is full with changes. It's important for you to just be in tune with yourself, be honest with yourself, and as you go along life's journey, be open, be willing to acknowledge and make changes as you discover self, as you feel a prompting of God working in you, and keep your passion as your focus. So without much further ado, I will hand back to Mr. Walker, and I do hope that you enjoy and you benefit from this evening session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. That was a fantastic introduction, and I didn't know that you were also a path switcher, so you're very, very welcome to the session. So let me just give everybody a quick overview. So just very quickly on the Past Students Union, it's to inspire in present and past students of the College a spirit of pride and loyalty, right? Encourage you to support the alma mater and support your school and achieve your full potential. And that's what we're trying to do here today. We're trying to inspire you to achieve your full potential, regardless of what you may be currently studying and currently doing, tapping into the passions that Mr. Joseph would have mentioned. So in our first session here today, it's really around how to achieve success in university and or your career, regardless of what quote unquote track on you might be studying businesses now, you might be studying science, but it could be that the thing you do in your life might be very different, and that's fine. And what we've assembled today is a series of a few panelists who have made these kind of switches, and how did it work? How did it happen? What did they do? So that's what we want to share with you today. But just a heads up, very quick heads up, is that once exams are done, we're going to come back with the second of this series, and we're really going to focus on novel places. So this session is a bit about novel paths. The next one is about novel places. Now, very typically, boys would be familiar with UE. Maybe they're familiar with US or UK or Canada universities, but in reality, there are lots of other places you could potentially study, lots of other countries you could potentially go to, and some of them are actually much cheaper and are available. So you're talking about Germany, Brazil, Cuba, South Korea, Spain. And we're bringing together alumni who have been able to study in some of these other places to tell their stories as well. So we looking forward to that session, and you'll hear about that soon. So I'm just going to stop sharing now, and what I'm going to do is quickly introduce our moderator for this session, and then the moderator will introduce the panelists, and then that will kick off. So our moderator for today is Mr. Kevin Harris. So Kevin is a doctor. He's a doctor at the Port of Spain General Hospital and a microbiologist. He also did somewhat of a career switch, and he could tell his story briefly, where he studied microbiology and started working in it and realized, you know what, I actually want to be a doctor. And then went back to school later on in his 20s and med school is not short, and went and actually did that switch and is now a doctor. So just want to introduce you to Kevin. Kevin is also on the Past Students Union with me and on our Student and School Affairs Committee. So over to you, Kevin.
All right, thanks very much, James. Good afternoon, parents and students, and welcome to the forum for Rethink University presented by the Past Students Union of St. Mary's College. Today, we'll present to you three panelists who have made career switches at various points in their career, not like myself, maybe a bit more dramatic, a bit more 180. And hopefully in sharing their story, we can let you know that the choices that you make now aren't fixed and they aren't permanent, and that there are options for you later on if you do decide to change your mind in terms of what you do. My experience really was that I left St. Mary's College in 2005 at A levels, and I decided I was going to do microbiology in the UK. Came back home, worked for 2 years, didn't particularly like the job I was essentially, quote unquote, stuck in, and decided to make the switch to medicine to have a bit more employability, essentially. And it wasn't an easy decision, but once it was made, I stuck with it. I had a talk with my parents, and they decided that they were going to support me at that point in time. All right, but we can have a chance to talk about that later on. In the meantime, I'll introduce you to our panelists this evening. First of all, we have Mr. George L. Youssef, who's a clinical informatics education specialist out of Portland, Oregon. Mr. Kirk Ananson, who's managing director of Balance Engineering and Construction Management Limited, based in Trinidad, and Mr. Christopher George, attorney at law, also based in Trinidad and Tobago. So to get the show started, we'll start with you, George.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to James Walker for facilitating this amazing event. Also, I would like to say hello to Mr. Joseph. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. As well as the other panelists in the group. And a big thank you to all you students and parents that are joining us right now. So my name is George L. Youssef. As stated, I am a clinical informatics education specialist and work for Providence Health and Services, which is a hospital that is located all over the West Coast as well as the Midwest. I design, create, and maintain training materials for the hospital's EMR. That's the electronic medical record system that they use. The fact that I work in the medical field is very interesting, since I tried my best not to get anywhere near the medical field when I attended CIC and later on. After being on the science track, so chemistry, biology, physics, add maths, I graduated from CIC in 1994 after Form 5. I don't know if you could even say graduated if you didn't even pass with any O-level exams. So I then went on to repeat Form 5 at St. Joseph Maracas, where I again graduated from Form 5 with not so great O-level results. So at this point, you can say that I probably was not on the right track. Let's go back a few years to shed some light on this situation and why I was on this track. When it came to my turn to choose my subjects in Form 3, I already had an older brother at CIC who did the science track, as well as a twin brother who skipped Form 3 and did the science track. Now, I'm of Middle Eastern descent, Lebanese to be exact. And for my parents, the only worthwhile career you should be in is either doctor or engineer. So while I wanted to do the business track, and no matter how much I begged and pleaded, I was forced into the science track. Now, whether that affected me mentally and led to me not pushing myself and excelling is up for debate. I do honestly believe that it had a lot to do with it. I worked for a year after in my father's business, and I got into trouble, started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And in August of '96, I was then sent to Portland, Oregon to live with my uncles and go to school. I again was told by my parents that I had to do engineering as they were paying my way. I was 18 years old, halfway around the world, and still felt the pressure of living up to my parents' expectations of me. I again failed miserably and was almost expelled from college for a low GPA and threatened to get sent back home to Trinidad. That's when I met with school counselors and advisors and formulated a plan. I decided to move into the social sciences, philosophy, psychology, etc. And my parents were not happy about that. They stopped paying my tuition. So I had to pay for my own schooling moving forward. So while working full-time and paying my own way at 19, I went on to graduate my associate's degree and a bachelor's degree in psychology. I then worked for several years in different jobs, not really utilizing my degree I earned. I did several intern jobs in the psychology world, but nothing really jumped out at me. Again, maybe a part of me was still fighting to stay away from the medical field, still resisting my parents' expectations of me, not wanting to be on that track. About 10 years ago, I found myself getting a job in a local hospital, working on the clerical side of things. So billing, finance, insurance, that sort of thing. It was then I realized that I loved that side of the medical world, and I didn't have to be on the clinical side of things. I went back to school to get my master's in health administration and have been working in this position now for about 8 years and loving every minute of it. I'm a father of 3 teenage boys, 13, 15, and 17, and I'm now going through the same thing my parents did while trying to carve out a career path for me. The difference is that I'm offering my advice to my children based off my experience, giving them all the knowledge of opportunities out there, and then letting them decide what path they want to go down and supporting them as they go. There were many obstacles in my way on my path to where I am now, but I was told I have to keep this to 5 minutes by James, so I'll save that for anyone who wants to contact me after. Just remember this: the world is your oyster, whether it's in Trinidad or somewhere else in the world. It's okay to change career paths. It's okay to try different things. At the end of the day, you are the ones who have to get up and go to your job. And if you're not happy at your job, you'll never excel at your job. There are many tracks, and they are different for everyone. And even if you are on the right track, you will get run over if you sit there. So keep moving, keep learning, and keep experimenting. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, George. Next, we will move on to Kirk and Anson. Welcome.
Hi, afternoon all. Afternoon, Mr. Joseph. For all y'all who don't know, I had Mr. Joseph, so you heard him say he was Dean of Form 1 and Form 4. Well, I had him as Dean of Form 1, and thought, yes, I've gotten rid of this man. As I went into Form 4, bam, who's Dean of Form 4? Mr. Joseph. So I had him twice as my Dean. So he's well familiar with me, and I'm well familiar with his track. So I'm a hard act to follow George, and my path is a bit different to George. I'd say I was your typical teenage boy, not thinking about career, not thinking about my future, living in the moment, playing sports, not really taking on school, not doing that great in school, just enjoying life, liming, whatever girls I could talk to, willing to talk to me, talk to them, that sort of stuff. And in Form 3, had to pick subjects. Didn't really do great in school in Form 3, actually. So I had to pick subjects and had no idea of what path. So did what I think most people typically do. They follow their parents' path. Both my parents were in the business field. I had an older brother like George who was in Saints. He was in the business field. I had an older cousin. He was in the business field. So I chose to do businesses. Form 4, buckled down a bit more. Form 5, really buckled down. Did pretty well at CXC. Got into Form 6 in Saints. Still on the business path. So at Form 6, I did all businesses. I did econ, accounts, and business in Form 6. And that July-August holiday between lower 6 and upper 6, I had a family friend who knew me from small, probably from birth, who always told my parents, I think Kirk would be a good engineer. And he was working down in Chagaramas repairing ships. So during that July-August holiday, he invited me to come work with him. So I went down to Chaguaramas every day. And actually, I worked a bit with him on the engineering side, but did a lot more with the guys in the field. So doing the fabrication, using acetylene torch, cutting, learning to weld, that sort of stuff. And absolutely fell in love with it. So after that summer, or that July-August holiday, I kind of put it in my head, this is what I want to do. I want to become an engineer. So continued my studies, actually did pretty well at A's in the business field as well. But after that, I'd made up my mind I wanted to do engineering. So because I did all businesses for the last 4 years, it was impossible for me to go into UE, into that engineering field. So I made this switch. I made a decision to go to the States. Unfortunately, at the time, and I think it's still that way a bit in the States, they don't quite understand the Trinidad educational system. So they threw me straight into engineering, which was a struggle. My first year in university, honestly, was a real struggle for me. Having not done sciences for 4 years, now doing chemistry, now doing physics, doing calculus. So really trying to get up to speed with that. So after my first year, I think I was pretty much on par with everybody else. Went through my next 3 years at university, because university in the States is 4 years. Graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. No honors, no nothing like that, just a degree. I was a mechanical engineer. What also happened to me while I was at university was I had a child, a daughter, who's 19 now. So I moved back to Trinidad with the support of my parents. So my daughter's mother lives in the States. My daughter moved back with me. So I moved back to Trinidad, had to find a job, could not find a job. So got a job at PCS Nitrogen as a summer intern. Started working as a summer intern, just finished university. And at the end of the summer, they were quite happy with my performance and were fortunately looking for a mechanical engineer. So they interviewed me as part of the interview process, and I was successful. Started my career at PCS, who's now Nutrien, in the Pondisas Industrial Estate. I worked there for about 6 years. For about 8 years, sorry. And my time there, I went from a trainee engineer to their maintenance superintendent in a 6-year window. So for me, who switched to do engineering, and I had a real passion for engineering, I really loved it, which is part of the reason why I was so successful so quickly in that company. I moved into management. And moving into management is a different way of thinking. And so I started to lean more on the businesses that I learned in Saints during those 4 years, and started to apply that and was able to talk that language. But having, in such a short period and making that switch, losing that love for engineering, I decided to open my own company. So while at PCS, I opened my own company, doing engineering on the side, trying to continue to develop because it was my passion. I then moved on to BG, worked BG for 2 years. And when I went to BG, I had a choice to work onshore, offshore. I wanted to learn the industry from out in the field. So I went offshore, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So 2 weeks off, nothing to do really. So again, more engineering. I had my company, so I started to do more on the side. So after 2 years there, I decided, right, I think I've had enough. Made a decision with my wife. We looked at our finances. We could have lived off of her salary. So took the plunge and went into my business full time. So 10 years later, actually, she has left her job and now she works in the business. The business has grown. But I've applied what I learned at SITS doing that businesses throughout my career. So I started my own business. I was doing my own accounts. I had an accountant that would check it at the end of the year, but I was doing all my journal entries and all that. So I applied what I learned on the business side and my engineering side throughout my career. So for me, even though I made that switch, I didn't lose what I learned at St. Mary's and that 4 years. And that's pretty much me in a quick summary.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Kirk. And last but not least, our panelist from Just Around the Savannah, who's not really one of the old boys, but has volunteered his time graciously to assist with this forum this afternoon, Mr. Christopher George.
Hi, thank you all for having me here today. Firstly, I think that this is a great initiative. I'll piggyback off of George and Rethink University. Some may ask how a Queen's Royal College boy got invited to St. Mary's Career Day. I actually think that it is an interesting story because I share a fraternity, a close friendship with James Walker, CIC boy. And interestingly enough, I still remember the day we were both interviewing for British Petroleum, and we're walking around. They maybe had 20 candidates there, and they were doing a rigorous interview process as BP does. And I look across the room. James looks at me. Both of us, we strike up a conversation. James then tells me, Chris, I think you and I are the only people who are going to get offered a job from these 20 candidates. And so said, so done. We were there on October 2nd, 2007, and both of us were the only people that got hired from that round, So, and since that point, James and I have had a great relationship and have maintained our relationship, even though we've gone in absolute different paths. So starting off in, a lot of us, we get influenced by our parents. And I remember a conversation that I had with my father in secondary school, Brian George, where he indicated to me, Christopher, you're going to learn all these different things. And each one of those things are important. And most probably you're going to only use 15%, but you don't know where that 15% is coming from. And I could kind of see that, Kirk has a piece of that, George has a piece of that within their story. So how I started in up to Form 5, I did sciences. As you've heard, I'm an attorney at law, but I did biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics. And then in Form 6, lower 6 and upper 6, I studied and did physics, further math and mathematics. At that point in time, and I think I was fueled by my father. My father always wanted to be an engineer, but he did not achieve that goal. So he really pushed me because he knew that I was good in math and sciences. At that point in time, I was like, all right, this is what we have to do. And I remember he only gave me 3 choices of subjects that I could do at university. He told me I needed to do either chemical engineering, computer engineering, or mechanical engineering. And I chose chemical engineering because I thought chemistry was my strongest science at that point in time. So I went to school in the United States and graduated with a degree in chemical and biomolecular engineering, kind of fulfilling my father's desire. And I remember coming back home after and thinking, at that point in time, I actually wanted to play a professional sport. I had an opportunity to go to Montenegro, and my dad and my mom look at me and they tell me, Chris, you're not going to school for 4 years for you to go and play a professional sport. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And my dad kind of made a deal with me. He said, Christopher, you go and work at BP. So he had it all charted out for me. You work at BP, you get an expat assignment, and then you can do what it is that you want. So I, being the good son, I kind of charted down that path. I entered the challenge program at British Petroleum as a process engineer. I got sent on a couple of expat assignments in Houston and Aberdeen, but it really was not something that was fulfilling my desires. I remember I made the decision in 2009, maybe 3 or 4 years into working at BP, that I wanted to start studying a second degree. So I started studying law full-time while I was working at British Petroleum. I ended up finishing my law degree in 2013, and it was the same time that I was posted in the United Kingdom as an expat working on an offshore project to deliver oil to Aberdeen, to the North Sea function of British Petroleum. I finished off that. And then after, I came back home to Trinidad and Tobago, and I knew I hit a wall. I had done every single thing that I thought that my family expected, but it still was not fulfilling me. And I kind of wanted a sabbatical. I wanted some time to figure out what it is I wanted to do. So that's where the sports, bug caught me. I decided in 2014 to quit my job and try making it to the Olympic Games in the sport of judo. Okay. It was kind of strange. I remember people thinking, it's like, Christopher, you have a great job at British Petroleum. You're quitting to try making it in judo. What is judo going to do for you? So I actually charted my pathway on that. I ended up winning a medal at the Central American Championships. And I think at that point, I convinced my father. He thought, it's like, all right, Chris, what is your way back? And I told him, I'll go to the Olympics in 2016. At that point in time, I had no idea if I was actually going to qualify, because no one had qualified for the sport of judo for Trinidad and Tobago in the Olympics. But I was assured that I could do it. And I also told him that I'll become an attorney at law. So he was thinking engineering to attorney. It's like, all right, Chris, I could see that. So I took the 2 years off, traveled. Thankfully, I qualified for Brazil 2016. I competed for Trinidad and Tobago. So unlike 10 years before, where I was pushed into a place where I did not get to do what it is I thought I needed to do to fulfill a certain component of my life, that fire that I had in me to compete in a sport, I got to do that in 2016. And then in 2016, I decided to go and do the postgraduate route. So I already had my degree in law, which I had studied while I was there at BP. And I then went to England and got called to the bar in England. I decided in 2017 to come back here to Trinidad and Tobago and enter in chambers. I primarily act as an advocate. So that has been my now 10 to 15 year path to getting to a place that I am deeply motivated to be in. And also I think it allows me to use all my skills. I think as an engineer, and this is part of the 15%, I suppose, you are taught to solve problems. And I think that every single subject that you do, you're taught to solve problems. And sometimes the problems that you face could be in law, could be in engineering. But again, everything has its place, so I'm no longer doing mathematical equations to design a facility. Now I'm looking at, solving individuals' problems no matter what part of the legal field it's in. So that's a short step, and I've pivoted a couple times. But, I want to thank St. Mary's College for inviting a QRC boy into the midst, and I hope that I could be of great value to you guys. Yes.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Very interesting stories. I'd like to start off by letting the parents and students know that you can ask your questions either by raising your hand in the participants box, or you can send your message via the chat. All right. To get us started off, I'd like to ask each of the panelists, like, did you have that one moment where you realized, nah, this isn't what I want to do, and what drove you to that point to say, this is definitely not what I want to do? Let me make that bold decision and change my career path. Because I can tell you for myself, I remember one day I was sitting at my office in Mount Hope, and I thought about what my life was going to be for the next 30 years. And I was like, I'm going to be stuck in this position. No upward mobility, no nothing. And I was like, nah, I can't see myself doing the same thing for 30 years with very little flexibility in terms of what I'm able to do. And I decided, what can I do? I love what I do, but I don't want to be stuck in this position. So I made a decision to start med school in my late 20s, because I just wanted to be able to continue to do what I wanted to do, but to have that flexibility to move out and branch out and be more employable in what I thought would have been a very changing market in terms of job availability. And that was my Alamo moment, essentially, where I made my final decision as to what I was going to do. All right. So what were you guys' experience in terms of when did you all decided you all were going to definitely make this career switch?
Well, I know for me, it was, like I said, and I had one of my sons walk by just a little bit ago, and he asked me, he said, why are you speaking with your, U.S. accent? So I think for the rest of this conversation, let me see if I could try and bring back the Trinidad accent for you. All right. So the thing for me was, after I realized that I was just spinning in mud. I did the sciences in Trinidad. I came over here, I did a year of engineering here. It wasn't going well and everything for me. And that's when I realized, you know what? I had to go out on my own. I know my parents not going to be happy, but, I'm not happy. I wasn't happy at all. So I had to look out for me. And at that point, I was 19 years old and whatnot. So like I said, I went, started working full-time while going to school full-time, putting in some long hours and everything. And finally, I found that area. It took me a few years and some hurdles, but finally I was able to find, the path, that track that I wanted to be on, that I was happy with.
I think for me, actually, it happened twice for me. So it happened the first time. I was actually driving home from Chaguaramas, sea breeze, that sort of stuff, window down, and saying, I like this. I could do this. I don't want to be stuck behind a desk all day. I want to be out in the field. I want to be interacting with this kind of stuff. And then happened again with me making a decision to go and open my own business when I went into management again. And again, it was more of an office job. Me realizing this is not for me, at least not at this time in my career. It's not what I want to do. I truly have a passion for being outside, working with my hands, being in the field, that sort of stuff. So it was that for me twice, just realizing being in the field, being around the equipment is what I enjoy.
All right, cool. Chris, we just have one question for you so far. Somebody would like to repeat what sport you did at Olympics of Trinidad before you give your answer to the question.
I competed in the sport of judo. So judo is a martial art. Some individuals may know karate, but it's different from karate in so much as you throw individuals onto their back. It's kind of like it's wrestling with pajamas, I suppose. So but it is a martial art. So that's what I did in 2016, and I was, that was a crazy journey too. And I think that it kind of judo, those 2 years kind of crystallized what it is I actually wanted to do. I thought, I still think that I'm an engineer. I consider myself a legal engineer, and I hold it as an advantage over individuals who've been lawyers for their entire adult life or their entire career. And I almost feel that, that the 15%, that piece of the engineering solving these problems kind of assists me. But how did I know that I wanted to do law? I think after I came back from Aberdeen in 2014 on my final expat assignment for BP, I kind of hit a wall, and I remember thinking continuously, it's like, how do I take control of what I want to do? I felt that with respect to me, I do have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I wasn't keen to kind of step so far out to be in a business that, starting from a fledgling stage, but I wanted a formal institution, which is the legal profession, where I can work for myself, where I can set my own time and my own hours. And I was a little bit exhausted after working 9.5 years at British Petroleum of being told exactly when it is that you work or how is it that you worked. And that was kind of like what happened to me. And those 2 years where I took off to go and do my judo journey, I had a lot of time to think. There was a lot of downtime. And that's when it crystallized. So it wasn't one specific situation, but I then knew, in 2016, after Rio de Janeiro, I was thinking, this is what I have to, this is the pathway. And I'm 5 years after, and I am content where it is that I am. So.
Cool, good stuff, man. So a question for Kirk and Chris, for you guys who made a complete almost 180, what was it like for you that first year when you had to adjust now to doing something completely new that you had no idea what was going on? I mean, for Kirk, I can imagine what it's like walking in a chemistry room for the first time in about 4 or 5 years, you know, because I mean, I remember when I went from Form 5 to Form 6 and they were like, first day chemistry, Form 6, lower 6, I was there. I remember exactly where I was sitting down in class and it was like, okay, this is what you did in Form 5. That's all well and good, but this is what it really is. And then you have to learn a whole completely different set of chemistry and you're like, your mind just goes out the window. Like, what was that like for you guys in that first year, doing something completely different, unrelated to anything you've ever done in your life?
I mean, for me, it was a struggle, right? 4 years studying business, your mind thinks a certain way when you're doing businesses. And to make that switch into that science field, not doing chemistry for, I guess, say 4 years, and the university I went was huge. So chemistry 101, where you're sitting down in an auditorium with 200-300 students. I mean, I don't know what my professor looked like in that chemistry class, right? Because I was at the back and she was at the front, so I couldn't see her face, kind of thing. So it was a real struggle. I wouldn't lie. That first year was a real struggle. What fueled me, I think, was knowing what I wanted to do, and that passion for wanting to become an engineer fueled me. But doing the businesses also helped me, because university in the States, you have to do all sorts of electives. So I just took economics and I didn't go to class. I used that time to study, and then I would go to exams and the professor would be like, what you doing here? You in this class? Yeah. And then I'm asking him questions, his multiple choice, and saying, well, this question has 2 answers. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you look at it this way, it's this. And if you analyze it this way, it's that. He just kind of looks at me and says, the answer is A. I say, okay, so shady, and you move on. But yeah, it's not easy. I don't think anybody on this panel will sit there and say it's an easy transition. It's hard work. But that hard work helps you in the long run, right? Because when you struggle with something and you fight with something, when you go into your career, you have that work ethic, and it just takes you forward.
So I think I saw one question asking, how long did it take me to become a lawyer? So I will answer that first and then answer how difficult it was, because I mirror Kirk's testament that it is difficult to change the way that you think, you know, but I think that that's life. So firstly, I did the law degree externally through the University of London. And because I had a degree before, I did it over 2 years, but I ended up extending it to 3 years because of the load that it was, working full time and trying to go to school at the same time. So I remember, you know, between 2010 and 2013, when I did my degree, I was up at early in the morning to get to work for 6:30 or 7 o'clock at BP. And then I would have classes from 5 to 9 in the afternoon, maybe 2-3 times a week. And then on weekends to do the different subjects. Now, how hard was it to transition? The way that you think, or you're trained to think as an engineer, it's along systems, etc. And there are systems in law, but you need to kind of cover a much larger base. So I struggled a little bit, especially with respect to the heavy load. You know, I guess the view is when you're in secondary school that if you don't like to read, you do, you know, engineering and sciences, but if you like to read, you do literature, etc. And I kind of had to relearn that, but you know, me relearning reading in a different way actually allows me to, I think, expand and, you know, be a deeper thinker on particular things, you know. And I think this is the systematic way of thinking, where it is that we look at a problem and put it into a box as engineers. Actually, once it is that you get a large enough competency in reviewing, you know, a very large document, you're able to kind of like take the high level points. And I almost see that as my, advantage, because engineering thinking is slightly different, but they kind of coalesce, or they come together sometimes. So it was difficult, especially I remember trust law was difficult, land law was difficult. You're hearing some of these really Anansi stories and you're thinking, it's like, why am I doing this? And that was 2013. And that's actually why I didn't jump out initially. I had a few years to think about, should I do this? I was thinking about going to Hugh Wooding. And because of personal reasons, I decided to go to the UK. And then again, when I went up to England, and now being in a formalized setting, doing the bar practicing training certificate, it was again another struggle, because there are these cultural differences. I had been trained in the US going to school. I did the law degree by myself, so I kind of figured out how to do it by myself. And then going into a formalized British system where, the language, everything else in between, it was then another struggle. So, I mirror Kirk and say it's not easy. And it ended up taking me 4 years to get my law degree so that I could practice down here in Trinidad. But, I think it's worth it when, I wouldn't change that struggle between 2010 and 2013 or 2016 and 2017 for anything. And I think it is instilled me with a certain level of tenacity. And, it's like, yeah, well, I can do this, so that's my perspective on that.
All right, cool. Thanks very much, guys. George, I'd like just like to revisit with you a little bit with respect to your struggles against the family pressures of, this is what we want you to do and we don't care about what you want to do. What was that like for you? And like, how has that influenced your decisions now, with you now being in the reverse as a parent, having to advise your boys in terms of how to go about shaping and choosing things for their career and their career paths now at this, the end of their essentially formative years of being a teenager?
That's actually a very good question, Kevin, because it never ends. It never finishes. So so just the same way my parents had these expectations of me going into doctor, engineering, etc. My parents are now my children's grandparents. So my boys are hearing it, from their grandparents as well. Excuse me. Not just that, but they're looking at their uncles, my brothers, who are a surgeon. One's a surgeon, one's an internal medicine doctor, the other one's a dentist. Plus close other relatives that are pharmacists, etc. So they have these expectations on them as well. So my role, and I've tried to do this from ever since young, is to, again, give them my experiences and let them listen to other people as well, right? And get their experiences, but also to let my boys know, these expectations, all right? You put the expectations on yourself. All right, that's what expectations are. Expectations are put on you by others and by yourself. So it's up to you if you want to listen to others and those expectations, or deal with the expectations you put on yourself. So, I try to talk to them about that, and I try to shape them and guide them, okay, but not force them. So, my oldest right now, he's a junior in high school here, which means he's in his third year. He has one more year. Will be a senior. So we're starting to look. Excuse me. We're starting to look at universities right now for him to go to, and I told him, I said, keep your mind open. I was like, if you want to go to Europe and study, Italy, Spain, France, wherever, I'm okay with that. He wants to stay here in the state and go to one of the local universities and be a pharmacist right now. So I said, all right, that's fine too. You go ahead and you do that. But I will also try to help them as well to navigate these paths, navigate these tracks, like we call them, because as I'm sure Cook can attest to, because Cook had a young kid, while he was still trying to navigate on his track. So did I as well. I had three young boys, and I was working full time and trying to get back into school to work on my masters, as well. So obviously, the older you get in life, the more of these obstacles are in your way. It makes it really harder. So again, it's just a matter of guiding them and letting them learn from my experiences, so that will help them eventually, to find that path, and let them know it's okay to struggle. Just let them know, it's okay to struggle. You're going to falter. You're going to change your mind once, twice, three, four times maybe while you go to school, but as long as they know that, myself and their mom will always be there to support them.
Yeah, I can imagine the level of patience that takes sometimes with children who have major indecisions about 1 year they want to do this, next year they want to do that sort of thing. Kirk, you want to chime in? What has your experience been like with your kid?
Yeah, well, I'm like George. I have three, but I only have one at that age. My other two are 4 and 5. Yeah, but I have a 19-year-old daughter who just finished her first year at university, going through the Trinidad system, choosing subjects, that sort of stuff. So I can relate a bit to what I guess parents in St. Mary's are going through. And like George, I switched. So I am one of very open, want you ready to do what your passion is. But it's amazing that just growing up in a house and growing up around family and hearing different things, my daughter still felt pressured to do something that let's say the majority think is a true career, or into a certain way of thinking and into a certain career path. Even though both myself and my wife are says, listen, we see you enjoyed this, you love this. Why don't you pursue something along this path? And she's still being pulled towards what I think traditional careers, or what the wider community sort of thinks as traditional careers. And that's, I think, partly the power of friends, right? Because I know a big part of my success in life is my friends group. Because they always say your friends take you, but they don't bring you back. And that's true. And I've been fortunate to be in a strong friends group that took me on a path. I mean, they all tell me they can't believe that I switched and did engineering, because they were all in business class with me. They're all in business still, and they can't believe it. But yeah, it's difficult to see it. But I look at my parents. My parents, I'd say, fortunately, didn't question me when I said I wanted to do engineering. They did question me when I said I was leaving BG to go and start my own, or continue in my own business. And I was a 30-year-old, married, not living in their house, with a daughter who was in secondary school, and they still questioned that decision, which is what parents always will do, right? They always want what's best for their kids. But now when I sit and talk with my parents, they are happy that I took the career path that I did, because they see my success because of my passion. And they say it all the time, that I'm fortunate that I'm working in a career that is truly my passion, and it's truly my gift. And so they have a very different outlook, call it 10 years later now. But at the time, they were very skeptical. And that's what I try to get across to my daughter as much as possible. That passion and doing something you enjoy is very important. And a degree at the end of the day, Chris touched on it, right? He said, you study as an engineer and they teach you a certain way to think and to solve problems. I know a lot of guys that went to school with me and did engineering with me. When they graduated, the military in the US pulled them. And they didn't pull them to do engineering. They just pulled them because of that way of thinking. And they wanted that way of thinking, solving problems within the military. So it's really for guys to have to be open and have that passion, and it's not easy for parents. I mean, speaking from being a parent, it's not easy for us to let go, especially in Trinidad. We tend to hold on to our kids and baby them a bit, but they're going to make the decision eventually. So it's really to guide them, and when they make the decision, to do what you can to support it as best as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, what about you? What were your challenges did you have any challenges at all when you went to speak to your parents about, hey, I'm gonna leave this nice cushy job here, go spend 2 years training, go to the Olympics, and then I'm not even gonna come back to this nice job. I'm just gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, so, I had my mom and my dad they had different views on it. I think I now kind of understand, because of the struggle, the big issue that I think parents are worried about are like financial struggles. And in 2015, I had received a package from BP. So I thought I was set, it's like, okay, I have the savings. I had planned out the 2 years that I was going to not be employed. I had money to pay my way through school in London, etc. But then you kind of hit a little bit of a financial, or the reality of life kind of hits you, especially, and those are like the trying times. And I now understand when my dad was having with me the conversation in 2014, that he was more or less worried about those type of things. Like, he understood that I had a desire to do something different, but he was also worried that, oh, wait a second, this is something that is almost guaranteed. And I think that is the motivation a lot of times from getting individuals into like these secure pathways. And 4 or 5 years later, I think that things are starting to uptick again, but it does take, if you told me in 2015 that 5 or 6 years later, I'll be making less money than I did at BP, I'm like, nah, impossible, but that's reality. Sometimes you're gonna have to make those type of sacrifices. But I do know that I am content in where it is that I am, right? And I am, I use the word joy. I think joy is like it's just moving towards a goal that you want to move towards. And I don't feel trapped anymore. I go to, in spite of all the things that are going on, with everything in Trinidad and Tobago, it's like, all right, I'm happy that I made this particular decision. And, I could see, my parents were generally supportive, and they are always supportive. They were not like, oh, Christopher, you don't do this. But I do see a lot of times it was worry, and I do respect that in the end, parents are trying to protect us, even when we're in our 30s, from making decisions that would change the trajectory of our lives. But so that's been my experience.
All right, cool, thanks. We have a question from the audience, and the question is, would it be wise for a student to grasp as much as possible now until they decide a path?
I would say definitely. I mean, I think everybody on this panel could say whatever they learned in their past path, be it businesses, be it sciences, be it engineering, they've applied it throughout their life going forward. And all of us, I think, have recognized what our calling is, or what our passion is at different times in our life, but we still use what we've learned in the past. No, I mean, Chris still uses his engineering thinking in what he does. I'm sure George still uses what he learned in psychology in his career now. I use business every day. I'm running a business now. So I have that business hat back on, and I used it throughout my career to help me move forward. So definitely, everything you learn. I always tell people, I used to talk to young kids before, through NEHRS, and I was just tell them, any job you get, it could be filing files. There's something to learn in it, right? Because that company's, that filing system, they have it that way for a reason. And you need to dig a little deeper and understand why they have that system that way. Not just sit there and say, okay, I'm putting this file in this cabinet, or I'm putting this file in that folder on a computer. If you learn and you understand why they're doing it that way, then you can take that forward into your next career, whatever it is, your next job.
Yeah, I think the exact same way too, you know. I think that we think, especially Form 3 to Form 4, things are set, and that you're going along this pathway and you can't really divert. And the thing is that your 20s are actually much longer than you think it is. You know, you get into jobs, you know, your 30s are long too, and you kind of think, all right, you know, if you went in and you got your degree at 22 or 23, you're still tremendous. You're so young, you know, and you could go in and have a 5-year career somewhere and decide at 27 or 28 that you just don't want to do this anymore. And, you know, Kevin's kind of attested to this. It's like you can literally become a doctor. You know, it's not like it is that you're trapped anywhere. Even in your 30s, you know, I became a lawyer at 33, and you know, so it's not that you're trapped in any way. And I think that with great institutions, you know, and I do respect St. Mary's tremendously, you have a support system. And I think the most important thing, especially when you're going through this transition of Form 3 to, you know, Form 4, as in you're extremely young, you know, you're 14, 15 years old, you have all this potential in front of you, right? And all you need to do is do it as best as you can, or just do it, walk that path, because even if you don't do it as well as you think that you can do it, it at least tells you what not to do, you know? And you're like, hey, well, that's maybe something that I don't want to do, you know, and you learn that lesson. And maybe it's not science, you know, maybe it's art that you want to do, maybe it's digital design. You know, there are a lot of examples of individuals who just kind of, all right, you know, I know everybody thought I was supposed to be a doctor, but maybe I don't want to do that anymore. And that's good to know, right? But you actually have to walk the path and don't be too scared or worried about maybe it's maybe I don't want to move forward in this, you know. Go forward excited. You know, if it is that you're in sciences, you can be a businessman after, you know. It's part of the journey. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to just to add on to that as well. Fortunately for me, you know, when I came here to the States, the opportunities, you know, were boundless, and all the different types of classes that I could take, you know, were, you know, limitless. Just anywhere you wanted to go. Not just that, but like I mentioned, you know, earlier, in talking with a lot of the advisors, you know, they have a lot of these, you know, tests where you could go sit down at a computer and they ask you all these random questions and you answer them based on your likes, your dislikes, etc. And then it spits out, you know, some career paths and stuff that you might be interested in. So, you know, so I was able to have that. But you know, you may be thinking to yourself, well, you know, I have to choose my track, Form 3. I have to go on this track. I really don't have that opportunity or not. But the fact is, in this day and age, with technology, you have the world at your fingertips. So you all are able to go online and you're able to look at different careers and research these things and broaden your minds on what it is you want to do. But the other thing I want to tell you all is, you know, again, when you're younger, you know, like you know, Chris was saying, you know, you're young, you get your degree at a young age, and you know, your life in front of you, and this is your career, this is the way you want to go. But you know, you want to think later down the line as well, okay, and where you want to go and where you want to do. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm also athletic director of a school that my kids go to. So I run the whole sports program for this school. I also coach American football at one of the local high schools that one of my kids go to as well, and I get paid for these positions as well. I wouldn't be able to do these things, to be honest with you, if I was a doctor on a doctor's schedule, right? And I know that for a fact because my brothers all have kids of their own, and they're constantly telling me, you're lucky because you're able to go to your kids' sports, you're able to coach your kids' sports, you're able to do these things, but they can't, whether it's because of their practice, their times, with that. So, we talk about all these different the paths and everything that you're on, and the tracks and stuff that you're on, but eventually you end up on that right track. Eventually you will end up on that right track. And right now, you may not think so, or you may not be sure, and that's fine. That's totally fine. Because like someone in the chat just said, they're 48 right now and they're feeling inspired, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You're never too old to go back to school. Okay. Yes, it'll be harder, but you're never too old to go back to school.
Yeah. And the next question we have from the question and answer is that all of you guys was earning potential a deciding factor in switching your career at any point. I can speak for myself. It wasn't really a big factor for me. A big factor for me was being able to move on and unstick myself essentially from where I was. I mean, financial reward, quote unquote reward, came as part of the job. But at the end of the day, I look at it like this. Even if I were offered $1 million to do something I didn't want to do, I don't want to do it. I love doing what I do now. And I don't think there's any amount of money that can really compensate you for happiness and time in particular. And like you said, George, like the ability for you to spend time with your kids, seeing them grow up and have an interactive part of their life is also a very important part of it. But what about you guys? Was the financial reward or financial earning potential?
I could speak to me specifically. I mean, I think that living the corporate life, you have a relatively competitive salary. And I kind of recognize after working at BP for 8 or 9 years, that was no longer a motivation for me. And I could say that quite specifically because there was a point when I came back home in 2017 into 2018 where I made $0 because I needed to do in-service and what is called pupillage. And then when I started practicing between 2017 and 2018, having your first client, I remember thinking that it is so much more fulfilling doing this job, making $500 or $1,000 for this particular thing than I got from kind of playing the game within the corporation. So at least for me, the financial aspect of it, I think finance comes when it is that you end up becoming more valuable. And I mean, if I'm just looking back at the last 4 years, all I'm doing is the job, and I believe that I'm getting better at it. And you start seeing, it's like, oh, okay, well, this month is a little bit better than last month, because I'm working for myself. And you're kind of creeping up the steps there. But I so much prefer this climb than what I was doing before, even though numbers wise it may not be equitable, but value wise and how I feel going to the office on a day which is my own office, how I feel setting up it, meetings with my clients, it's about ownership of the process of our lives. And the last I would say the last 6 years, since 2015, 2016 of doing those years of the Olympics and the last few years of working, I feel I have so much more ownership of where I am going, what I am doing, And I think that in the end, if you talk about value and monetary value, which is always important, I think where I'd be in 5 years would be tremendously more lucrative than what I would have been doing working, and then also just with respect to myself and how I feel about myself and what it is I'm doing. So that's my answer to that question.
For me, money wasn't a factor. Actually, I didn't. When I made the switch to engineering, I had no idea what an engineer made compared to any other salary. It was truly a passion. But even leaving a career at BG and starting my own business, I mentioned that when I left, my wife and I, we lived off of her salary pretty much for the first 3 years after I left BG. We just lived off of her salary. And guys would see me, guys who worked with me and knew me, they couldn't believe that I left a job to do what I was doing, because I was out in the trenches with them, mudding my boots in coveralls every day, working with them. But it was a true passion. It's what I enjoyed and what I loved. So my path and making the switch has always been driven by my passion for engineering, and not financial gains at all. But like Chris, working for myself, there's even more. You get even more out of it now, because like you say, it's your clients, it's your business you're building, and I'm hoping to build something for my kids to take over from as well. So I think that more fuels me than financial reward. Like Chris, hope that in the end, probably financial rewards will be better than sticking in a job, but that's a risk you're taking, but it's not a driver at all.
George, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say, well, for me, because of my, like I said, being younger and tried to be steered in this one path, this one track, when it was time eventually, and I made my own decision to switch gears or whatnot, I was just looking for them to make me happy. I was just looking for a career that I'd be happy in, and I really wasn't thinking about money and salary and stuff at that point, because I knew that if I found something I was happy at, and I knew I gave it all and everything, eventually I'd find that salary or whatnot would come to me. And my wife and I, we got married when we were really young. She was 21, I was 22, and she went along the same path as well. To be honest with you, when she graduated high school here, she wanted to be a pharmacist, so she went to pharmacy school for a year. But then she had a change as well, and she wanted to become a teacher. So she became a teacher, and Mr. Joseph, she's a principal now, actually. So she's a principal of a school now. So so we both had that same kind of mindset and stuff. We really wasn't looking at salary wise and whatnot. And thank God now, like I said, the position I've been in about 8 years right now, and a really good salary as well. But over here in the US, you also have pay scales in certain whatnot, all careers really, to be honest with you. The higher your degrees, the more you're going to get paid, right? So so again, when I went on to do my master's, I was able to use that to my benefit, because there are people who do in the same position as me who make less than me because they don't have the degree that I have. So so really, just going back to the point, it wasn't nothing for me really was salary based at the beginning. So however, I will say, when you are looking at your careers and stuff that you want to do in life, again, when you're young, you're only thinking present. You're thinking for yourself at that point in time what you're going to do. You're not really thinking future. You're not really thinking, all right, when I get married and I have 3-4 kids and I have a mortgage and I have car and I have this, being able to to pay for all that. So, there's definitely some sense of that you want to have, at some point in time, I would say.
Yeah, definitely echo that, George. While it may not be the driver for the switch,
It is important.
Finances is a rule that you need to take into account when you're making decisions.
Yeah, definitely. So what I want to ask you guys now is like when you had already made the switch and you started this new path now. Was there anybody you really lent on, or any group of people that you really leaned on to encourage you? Because I mean, I'm sure at some point I'm like, my God, why am I doing this? Why have I decided to even think about this now? I think I could give up now. And somebody who was there, or some group of people who were there to push you and spur you along and be like, nah, you got to stick with it. This you're gonna make it through to the end. Because I'll tell you, like when I went to my parents, I was like, I'm gonna leave my job and go study medicine for 5 years, and they were like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think this is definitely what I want to do." And they were like, "Okay, as long as you are sure this is what you want to do, we're here for you." And they were there for me the entire 5-year period. My friends who were really close to me, even the ones you met even while you were on your new program, were there to kind of keep you up and carry you along for the journey as well. What were you guys' experiences at that point in time in your switch?
My own was, I mean, I obviously, it was, there is actually alumni association, at least with me. I remember that what I kind of leaned on there were some QRC boys who were practicing. They actually practicing much longer than me because of my age. They were practicing for maybe 9 or 10 years. And I remember reaching out to individuals who had kind of gone through those steps before, so I actually benefited from having older friends, and I dare I say it wasn't only QRC boys, there were people who had gone through that process and I reached out to for mentorship. And I think that maybe the point that I'm trying to make here is that you have groups of individuals to support you, and the most important thing is to ask the question for that particular support. These are great forums where it is you get names of old boys who have struggled the same struggle, gone through the same Form 3, the same Form 5, the same Upper 6, have gone in and I've had maybe 15, 20 more years experience after Saints, and they now are able to give you perspective on maybe a struggle that you have because they have the benefit of reflection. So that's maybe what it is I'm saying. So what has happened, especially over the last 4 years since 2017, when I came back, I remember having speaking with a lot of people, not only my parents, but friends who have 10 more years experience than me in the profession. And when it is that you have certain tough times that test your commitment to this new pathway that you're on, they actually help you to go to push over that hump. So I would say lean on the network. And I see James here has leverage your network, right? Because St. Mary's, I'm confident with the great past students that you guys have, that you all have a tremendous network, and just reach out. And then again, even those outside of the immediate CIC family, anyone who is motivated and you can see their passion, I would have the conversation with them, so that's at least my perspective.
No, I was lucky enough that I had a couple cousins who had went to college here in the States, and went through the same thing I did. They came with the intent of, their parents had that medical engineer / track, for them, and they ended up changing. So I had the luxury of leaning on them. One is now president and CEO of Dade County in Miami, Federal Credit Union there. The next one, he ended up getting like a master's in chemistry, a PhD in chemical biology and whatnot, but he's now a physical therapist, because he really wasn't, happy doing that. So I had that luxury of leaning on them. So if you all do have the family or the friends that has gone through it before, of course, I would definitely say reach out to people and see. Of course, like Chris just said as well, the past student union, as well. You have lots of people on there who are either still in Trinidad, abroad, went abroad, came back, etc., who would have gone through that as well. And of course, I'm sure Chris and Kirk would also agree. Us as well. Feel free to reach out to us. If you want to talk some more offline about this. And then I can't stress enough your teachers as well. Talk to your teachers. Talk to your principal. Talk to Mr. Joseph. I felt fortunate enough when I went to CIC that I had a really good relationship with a lot of my teachers there, and had candid conversations with them while at CIC. And even when I used to come back home for summer vacation, Christmas vacation, whatever, I would always make it a point to come and to come and talk to them. People like Father Mendez, Mr. Raja, they stick out, as people and stuff that I was able to bounce things off of, even while I was going through struggles, over here. So your networks are so wide out there that you may not even think about that. But any and anybody, always reach out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what part and parcel of what the Past Students Union is. We are an avenue for students to reach out in case they have any questions or they want to communicate with anybody about anything in terms of career paths or anything along those lines. I mean, we put on a career day in particular for people to hear people's experiences in different career paths, both locally and internationally. I mean, Kirk, I don't know if you have anything else to add to the question in terms of who was there for your support while you were going through your changes.
Well, my parents were a big support factor. I guess my situation was a bit different because I had my daughter after my first year at university, and that changed my perspective a lot as well. And I used that to fuel me and drive me. So that was a big driver for me. My parents' support was huge, especially during that time. And then, well, I went to, like I said, a huge school, but I was fortunate. I played rugby for the school. And there was a guy in my program that played rugby as well, same year as me. So I think the two of us together sort of drove each other to do better and stick with things and get things through. So that sort of friends group as well also helped me.
Yeah. And I'd like to reiterate what George said. Make use of your teachers and your deans, especially while you're still at school. One of my biggest helps was actually my course advisor while I was doing my first degree. She's the one who pushed me and helped me to choose where I was going to do my master's, and it was a big influence. I think definitely, I guess most you guys can attest, when you're 12, 13, just enter secondary school, you're not thinking about these things. I remember my dad was begging me to do a foreign language, begging me, and he was like, but he still allowed me to choose what I wanted to do. And I hated languages. I just could not wrap my mind around doing a foreign language. And it's only now 15, 20 years later, you're like, shucks, if I'd only listened, I should have done a foreign language. It would have given you so much more now as an adult to have that extra thing to do to add to your CV that will definitely make you stand out now. And sometimes you have to, sometimes I feel as though maybe you're not ready to receive that information yet as a young teenager who at that age you feel as though you're on top of the world, you are the adult in the family. And I hope the students who are listening are able to take on board what we're trying to impart to them.
You know,
And so-
Kevin, I just like to say really quickly,
Yeah.
you know, what Kevin is saying, and I say it to my kids all the time, not just my kids, but all my players and stuff that I coach as well in sports, etc. There's nothing you're gonna say, there's nothing that you're gonna do, there's nothing you're gonna feel that we haven't done, said, or felt before. Okay, so you have that. All right, so that is the knowledge and the experience at your fingertips with your family, with your friends, with your pastor in union, with your teachers, the deans, the principals, etc. Use it.
Yeah, but funny enough, you see that we when we were that age also heard the same story, and we're also like, yeah, right, you don't know what you're talking about, you know. Only to realize 20 years later, hey, they knew exactly what they were talking about. Here you are now preaching the same gospel, reading the same scriptures, you know. So that said, let's get on to the next question here from Q&A, right? Comes from one of the students, it looks like. Due to COVID, they are unable to enjoy their time at CIC, both educational-wise and sporting-wise. What advice can we give with the limited resources we have to access for his future?
Well, I would say the good thing is you're only Form 2, which means, you know, hopefully Trinidad will have COVID under control. It's, you know, sometime before you reach Form 4 or Form 5. I hope that you're able to have all these opportunities available to you there. So, you know, it's just it is what it is at this point in time. Unfortunately, I wish, you know, we could tell you more than that, but you know, as that, you know, Trinidad and those in Trinidad probably could speak better for this than myself. But you know, having gone through this last year here, you know, it's just you do the best you can, and deal with it. The only thing I can say is that this is just going to shape you, and it's going to make you even stronger for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know at that age, sports, especially sports, is a huge part of being a secondary school student. I mean, I look back at some of my best times in secondary school, even if you weren't participating in sport, just like me and my classmates, we look back at sometimes our progression through school and our interactions with each other. And you look at our interactions then, as opposed to our interactions now. People you never spoke to really in school, you're all now communicating because you're all adults, and your relationships change. So I do sympathize a lot for the students who are in school now and aren't able to have that social aspect. Particularly for ones who've come in now to an environment where you've had no personal interaction with your teachers, you've had no personal interaction with your deans, you've had no personal interaction with your fellow students. I mean, I can remember what it's like, boys, in Form 1. You walk into a completely new environment. You went from a school of maybe some primary schools as small as maybe a couple hundred people to a school where in CIS you have 1,100 students every single day to deal with, and you send out somebody who you may not have necessarily gone to primary school. I mean, only 3 guys from my primary school entered my year in CIC, and we were all in different classes, you know. So I do sympathize, and I really do hope that we can get the COVID situation under control as soon as possible, so that you do get that experience and you don't miss out on it. I agree with George. You are in Form 2, so you have a lot of time, hopefully to be able to make up for those experiences. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add with respect to that in particular.
Well, maybe I just want to mention one thing. I mean, we've also heard stories from today of people who in their 20s and 30s have gone on to do something different. And it's just to reassure you that, you know, the experience that you have in a pandemic in Form 2 is not going to be the experience that you have in Form 5, and it's not going to be the university experience. It's not going to be the first career experience, and it's not going to be your mid-30s experience. Unfortunately, we are living now, and I mean, people who are of Form 2 age have a decent shot of making 100, literally. So you have a long time to go yet, and yes, it sucks in this time right now, but it's all about, well, how could you make the best use of what you have at your disposal now? And just remember, think how do I set myself up to really capitalize on that? in 6 months' time, in 2 years' time, and in 5 years' time, once we're over this, and I get to, I get to achieve and go after the things that I'm really passionate and that bring a lot of joy. So I want to encourage you to keep at it. I know and this must be an awful time, but keep at it. Keep at it.
Yeah. And also remember when you go back to school, how much you missed it. Because I'm sure everybody here when they were in school, they say, man, I wish we could not have to come to school every day. But now you miss it, right? You want to go there. Because I always tell people, I think I realized it a little late in life, but school is fantastic. The classes get in your way, but school is fantastic. You see your friends every day, you could lime, you could go and kick ball after, you could go and do whatever after. School is fantastic. So yeah, it's for a period of time, it's going to shape you, it's going to make you stronger, and hopefully make you appreciate when you get to go back out what you missed.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, and as tough as it is now, in about 10 years' time, you're gonna be laughing with your friends while you're liming somewhere, maybe in a foreign country, like, hey, remember that time we had COVID and we couldn't go to school? And life goes on, to be quite honest with you, and time waits on no man, like my dad always tells me. We're all here, we're all suffering it through in the same way in our own form or fashion. But the best advice I can give is keep your head up and try to keep your head on as much as possible, as difficult as it is at this point in time.
And I wanted to just add also really quickly this mental health, mental wellness. All right, that is really, really important as well, especially for all you young people. And like what you need to do also is, again, like I said, this day and age we live in with technology that we have, you have the ability with your smartphones, all right, to get onto the different chat groups, FaceTime, WhatsApp, whatever it is, with your group of friends where you can video each other, all right? And I'll be honest with you, during the height of the pandemic here, that is something that I was doing 2, 3, 4 times a week with different groups of friends at different points. Okay, whether it was my friends and stuff who still live in Trinidad, or coworkers and stuff that are over here, family groups that I have as well. So I would definitely advise you to take advantage of that and use that. And then as just really quickly for athletics and sports wise, as a coach myself, again during the pandemic, I had a lot of different websites that I would send my players to. Okay, that would allow them to find different exercises and drills that they could have done in their own bedroom. So you have that opportunity as well. Anybody interested in that, who into sports or whatnot, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'll be happy to direct you there.
Yeah, definitely. And just getting on to that, guys, we coming to the end of this session. So I'd just like to invite James back on to give us a final wrap on today's session.
Good. Thank you very much, Kevin. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody who attended. I think we had up to 100 participants today. And also very much thank the panelists for taking their time to come and speak with us today. CIC or QRC, we appreciate them all. And so just want to recognize them for their efforts as well. I recognize Brevard, who is president of the Bar Student Union, who has been supportive of this effort throughout and helping us prepare for this event as well. I'll just drop in the chat in a second the email address for the PSU, and remember you could also look up the PSU on the website, Facebook page, etc. and get in touch with us if you want to continue this conversation, or if you have specific questions to any of the panelists, you can address it to them now or via email afterwards. So I just want to as we wrap up, turn the floor back over to Mr. Joseph again, who could just wrap up first and say a final prayer for us, please. And you're on mute.
Yeah, there isn't much really that I can add. Just sitting down and listening, and yes, remembering these young men in their early years when they were in Form 1. All of you all, I mean, well, Mr. George, you went QRC, but all of the guys in the panelists, I know, I actually know them as students and so forth. And it's interesting to sit back, like a proud father and just look at where you will have reached after all that you've gone through at St. Mary's and all the challenges at times you would have received. But I must say that it's quite heartening to take off your time and talent and to see you do that, because one of the things we always talk about at St. Mary's, it's about also being able to give back to society, that you are taking off your time and your talent to help young men along their own journey. And that's priceless. You really cannot put a price tag. Just like how I sit here and I feel so proud to see all of you all before me, so successful and doing so well, that I know that you will share that feeling when you see people, young men who are on right now, reach out to you and said, look, I remember you inspired me to do this. You inspired me to do that and make this choice. That is what St. Mary's family is about. And I give 100% support behind it. I'm eternally grateful for the contribution. And I look forward to a lot more of these sorts of things going on and happening, because our young men have so many options before them. And when you have, in our days, we had 2 television channels to choose, channel 2 and 13. So it wasn't hard. You turn on the TV and it's either this or that. And in fact, both showed the same thing anyway. So you now come to a situation with hundreds of channels, and suddenly too much is confusing. It's like when you drive into a parking lot and you have 1 or 2 spaces, you maneuver and you go quickly, you walk, you drive in and it's a lot. You find your park bad because should I park in that block or in that block? I know that's my experience. And that's what our young men are going through now. There are so many choices. And whether they know it or not, it is very helpful to have people to walk along with you, to sound off, to get some further insight so that you make informed decisions. That is priceless. And I really do hope that, more young men take full advantage of this opportunity, and it does help them as they go along. So I really want to say thank you from the very depths of my heart towards reaching out to helping with, shaping, guiding the future, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but look, you have George in the US, and we have CIC fellows literally every part of this world, that you are helping to shape them so that they make meaningful impacts wherever they may go. So thank you for that. And again, to James' request, just a closing prayer. Father, we truly thank you for this session. We thank you for the way in which you take our talents and you use it to multiply and benefit not just individuals, but our society on a whole. And we pray that indeed, as we continue along our life's journey, that we always have in our hearts a desire to give, to share, to help others in their own way, that we all would find that we live in harmony, in peace, and in joy. To your glory, your honor, your praise. In your name we pray. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again, gentlemen, and I wish all of our participants best wishes, and that you can take something away from this time you've spent that would propel you in a direction in your life's journey. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Have a great evening.
Have a great night, guys.
Bye. Bye.